This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Greetings from the Philippines to the world. We are on Facebook Live on Eagle News and Net25 TV and also on our streaming site eaglenewslive.com. Watch us on our YouTube channel at Net25 TV. I am Cesar Vallejos. Welcome to Open for Business. Join me discover the latest news and information in business around the world. Stay ahead of the curve from vision to action. To prevent the health risks from face-to-face and over-the-counter financial transactions, Filipinos are shifting to digital payments. This is aligned with the roadmap of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas to convert at least 50% of the total transactions to digital channels and increase to 70% the number of Filipino adults who are paying or transacting in the formal financial system. According to a survey, the Philippines ranks low in financial inclusion, and a McKinsey study found out that only 9% of Filipino consumers use a smartphone to bank. In this episode, we will talk about accelerating financial inclusion and innovation. Aradhna Sharma, Regional Sales Director of Advance AI, will also talk about digital transformation among banks and financial services players in this week's episode of Open for Business.
Sa panahon na laganap ang mga sakit, katuwang nyo ang BMEG Premium at Protect Plus Gold. Gawa sa state-of-the-art facilities ang BMEG Premium Feeds. Kaya ito ay safe, sanitized, and hygienic. Walang dalang sakit, certified, malinis, sariwa at sigurado. At para laging malinis ang paligid, gumamit ng Protect Plus Gold. Isang safe broad-spectrum disinfectant na pumapatay ng mga virus, bacteria at fungi. BMEG Premium at Protect Plus Gold. Sama-sama sa laban, walang iwanan.
I'ma ride long as I am alive. Whoa.
Word up, no rap, no crap, your boy.
Bakit para tayong nasa monthly finals na pa-semis na? Ba't ganon? Grabe.
Lahat ng ginawa ninyo parang hindi kayo nagko-compete. Kung sino man nanalo ngayon, good luck talaga.
Samahan niyo po kami as we once again make Cindy the dance floor on fire. Dito lamang po yan sa Tagisan ng Galing Part 2 Dance Edition.
Open for Business is back, and with me is the Regional Sales Director of Advance AI, Miss Aradhna Sharma. Aradhna, how are you? I know that you're in Singapore. How is Singapore?
It's great, actually. It's safe. Things are almost getting back to normal, though the new normal, I should say.
A lot of people here in the Philippines are still working from home, and there's some limitations still in terms of movement and social distancing. Is that also true in Singapore?
Yes, that's very true. So 2 days in the office, the rest from home, and social distancing with groups of 8 people allowed.
Oh,
Which is better than 5, which was last year.
Yes. Okay. This afternoon, Mr. Radna, we'll be talking about acceleration of financial innovation and inclusion. There are a lot of members of the small and medium scale enterprises who are watching now, and the general public would know also, before we discuss acceleration of financial inclusion, if you can discuss a bit on what exactly is financial inclusion.
Sure. Look, I think digital transformation is what really enables financial inclusion. And this meaning financial access of products and services to the general population across, let's say, Philippines. And this includes people in the rural areas, this includes people across the 7,600 islands who don't generally have access to financial services, either because they don't have digital means of accessing it, because of the location, because of the lack of digital infrastructure. So majority of these people are referred to as unbanked. So they've never actually had a bank account or don't have a credit history. And some of these population also includes the underbanked, who are the people who need these financial services but don't have access to it because of the lack of credit history, etc.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a very clear explanation. So yes, a lot of our population here in the Philippines experience that. And I just am compelled to really compare what's happening there in Singapore versus the scenario here in the Philippines. Pre-COVID, when we were still traveling, the moment you arrive at the Singapore airport, digital financial access is already available, and you can use a lot of means already to use or to access digital ways, to really do your transactions. So, can you describe how advanced Singapore is in terms of financial inclusion versus the Philippines and probably the other ASEAN countries?
Sure. Look, I mean, with Philippines, only 34% of Filipino adults have an account at a formal financial institutions, compared to the likes of Indonesia, who have 49%, or Thailand, who have 82%, Malaysia, 85%, Singapore, a lot higher. Because in Singapore, digital finance, digital transformation, digital banking is readily available to everyone, and it's accessible through means of digital banking. As you know, Singapore government had obviously granted the digital banking license, which again has really supported the digital banking businesses, not just the digital banking businesses, but it's also forced the traditional banks to extend their offering to the wider population, who once again had been, I suppose, underserved by the financial services and products that were available to them. And what this, digital banking license has done in Singapore, it's kind of, injected innovation and market efficiencies into our economy. This means that smaller businesses have access to greater loans now, so they're able to expand their businesses. They're also able to offer financial services to people much more cheaply and much more faster than the traditional banks. And this has really forced the traditional banks to rethink their financial services and products, and to see how they can make it cheaper and faster now that they're competing with not just small digital neobanks, they're competing with the big techs. You've got, Grab, which is a rideshare company. You've got Gojek in Indonesia, one of our clients. So these big tech players now also dabbling in the markets and battling for market share. It's forcing the traditional banks to go down the digitalization path as well, and being able to offer the wider population better services and cheaper.
That's very interesting. You mentioned that banks are rethinking their products and services because they are now competing with the big tech players. So my question is, as they rethink it, are they also changing their business models? Are their efforts also to somehow, because a lot of these things are very disruptive in nature, are we looking at what's your outlook on the growth of the banking industry as well? Is there also a transformation as far as traditional banking services are concerned?
Yes, look, I think it's changing rapidly. So a lot of the big banks around Asia specifically, but also in Philippines, are now offering digital services. So this has happened in particular in Philippines before even the license requirements has been introduced. So it's already happening, and I think this is really born out of demand from customers. I mean, when was the last time you stood at a bank in a line with photocopied documents that you need to go and get certified? And now financial institutions are realizing that they can actually leverage various technologies out there to speed up that process and make it digital, which one is a win-win. It's win for them because it costs savings and introduces efficiencies, and a win for customers because it's better customer experience. And because it's cheaper for the organizations to offer these products, that means the customers win in having access to much more affordable products. Now, these, digital technologies would include digital ID verification, for example, or document OCR, AI and machine learning to be able to apply that to your data analytics. So I think traditional banks are definitely getting smarter and catching on to a lot of these technologies. And a lot of our clients across Southeast Asia actually include a lot of the traditional banks who've kind of embarked on this journey of digital transformation. We've got chartered banks, CIMB in Indonesia, Vietbank in Vietnam.
And when you speak of digital transformation, of course, we also deal about what we have been talking about even during before COVID, which is the fourth industrial revolution. And as we always say, these concepts, these ideas were really applicable to the more developed countries like Singapore. But what has changed with the advent of COVID-19? Some experts say that it was really COVID-19, that was the key driver for the fourth industrial revolution. Do you see, and in your assessment, are the other ASEAN countries like the Philippines ready for the fourth industrial revolution? And for some of the countries or some of the companies, small and large companies, what do you think is a good way to look at digital transformation? I'm sure with your company, as the name itself, it's Advanced AI, and you are committed to that. But in your view, as also as an expert in selling or promoting solutions under the fourth industrial revolution, how ready are ASEAN countries like the Philippines in embracing digital transformation?
Sure, that's actually a really good question. Look, if we look at what's happening in Philippines, for example, ATM transactions in Central Manila dropped by 25% since there was enhanced community quarantine measures put in place in May 2020. At the same time, there was a huge spike in digital or mobile banking signups. I think Union Pay reported an increase in new account openings by 27-fold compared to the previous year. So clearly, COVID-19 has already accelerated the adoption of, digital forms of engaging with businesses and buying online and registering for accounts. So it's already here, whether people are ready, whether businesses are ready or not, it's here. And I believe it's irreversible. Once you get used to a certain way and convenience, there is no going back to what was so much harder to do. But I think the real question here is, are the banks and financial institutions or even insurance companies equipped to deliver this need that has really been accelerated by COVID? And if they are, financial inclusion can spread further into Tier 2, Tier 3 cities in Philippines, allowing businesses and customers to transact online. And in order to manage, I guess the risk that poses in promoting financial inclusion, which obviously includes people who don't have a credit background, don't have a credit history, so much tougher to evaluate. So in order to manage risk, organisations will require advanced credit scoring, risk assessment technologies to build credit profiles of largely unbanked and underbanked population and SMEs who need access to loan, while ensuring that these services that they're providing are sustainable long term, that we're not having credit defaults, that we are doing a thorough check, that we're doing identification checks, etc. So there are various measures that you can put in place to ensure that the risk is managed for a certain population where we can't just go to a credit bureau to check. Now, our recent partnership with the Credit Bureau in Philippines has definitely strengthened our capability to be able to build and create and access data that relates to credit risk for a lot of this population applying for loans.
Wow, that's interesting. Now, can we, do you have some specific strategies in terms of acceleration? Of course, you mentioned the unbanked, those who don't have any, credit history, and those who are, for the first time that they will encounter digital banking only during COVID, because they have no choice but to stay home and be online. So, what are your specific recommendations on how the Philippine banking industry can also develop financial inclusion? Are there specific steps or recommendations that you can provide, so that they can somehow, as you said, there's a lot of big tech players now who are also engaged in digital banking. Is that right?
Yeah, you're right. To increase, what we've learned across Asia, where we've seen this happen in emerging markets such as Philippines, in order to increase financial inclusion, it requires some major long-term public and private investment and reforms to really support this digitalization to increase financial inclusion. Now, in terms of public reform, this is centered around for Philippines in particular, cost and nationwide coverage of high-speed broadband. Without this, people can't access the digital services. It could include national identification system like we have in Singapore, which is called MyInfo for digital IDs, accessible by a government database. Financial literacy programs, so no one is left behind. That also promotes financial inclusion and understanding how to manage your funds. Expand coverage of credit reporting systems. Develop IT and digital talents through upskilling programs like we have in Singapore. Data privacy and security regulations to give customers assurance that their data is managed appropriately, which is going to be a big deal in forming that trust and credibility to drive digital adoption. Financial incentives and support to startups and small businesses for digital transformation or innovation, or adopting innovative technology solutions, such as the grants that MAS has in Singapore. And for private sector, such as banks and financial services, their long-term business strategy and roadmap, in order to plan in supporting financial inclusion should be through really defining and understanding what kind of products and financial services will they be providing, who will be my main customers, and what products and services they will offer in what regions, who are my specific target audience, what kind of structural change and risk do I foresee, what kind of partners should I be looking for, what is my risk appetite for extending loans to these unbanked population, what technology capabilities will I need for a digital, end-to-end digital offering. For example, Advanced AI's financial services clients typically engage us to leverage our technology for online ID verification, biometrics facial comparison, OCR capability for data extraction from documents, credit risk decisioning powered by AI and machine learning in order to expand financial access quickly, cheaply and digitally for products like credit, savings, insurance, pensions and remittances to people who haven't had access to these previously. So I think those are really the key things in terms of private and public sectors that need to happen to support the financial inclusion of the people in Philippines.
Wow, that's quite a lot, and those are, and at the same time, those are very, very strategic directions and very concrete ones to really go into this financial inclusion. We have other questions. We'll get back to this conversation when Open for Business returns. Stay with us.
Maglaro muna tayo ng pickle cup!
Ang batang laro lang yan. Ayaw namin ng kuya kampo yan.
Baguhin mo nga yung ugali mo sa kalusugan. Hindi maganda yun.
Okay lang maglaro dito sa Plaza Rodolfo, pero ang magkalat, bawal! Ikaw ba lahat kumain yan? Ikaw ba kalat yan lahat?
Hindi tama yung ginagawa mo, Bebeng, ha?
Sana, lahat na lang ng mga tao dito sa Barangay Agila maging batang tulad ko.
Hi, Bebe!
Wow!
Sumaya tayong lahat.
Samahan sina Wedge Kujamat,
Itong balitang panggising sa ulo ng mga balita.
Apple David,
Sa 60 katao ang isinugod sa ospital.
Phoebe Publico
Economic sabotage ang mga tiwaling negosyante.
at Cristel Pesalbon
Pag-presyo ng gulay, makakausap natin
para iatid sa inyo ang mga kaganapan at pangyayari sa bansa at sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo. Mga napapanahong isyu ng bayan. May balitang sports, entertainment at iba pang kaalaman. Simula Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 5 ng umaga sa paborito nyong morning show, Pambansang Almusal, dito sa Net25.
Pambansang Almusal.
Open for Business is back, and still with me is Ms. Radna Sharma, the Regional Sales Director of Advance AI. Radna, we left these strategies that you mentioned that can be done by both the public and private sectors in ensuring that financial inclusion can also be guaranteed here in the Philippines. But with the COVID-19 crisis, there's no guarantee, as we are still all learning from this new normal, which leads me to my next question. Pre-pandemic, there has already been experiences both from the Singapore and Indonesia experiences about digital transformation, and with this experience, and as you mentioned off cam, you spent 4 years already in Singapore, but with all that's happening with COVID-19, has there also been a shift in digital strategy? You said a lot of things have been accelerated by the pandemic, and everyone's forced to do it, whether they like it or not.
Ready or not, yeah.
But so far, in terms of making all these strategies concrete, do you think your learnings or the experience with Singapore and Indonesia can be applied, or are our neighbors also instituting new AI rules or discovering new innovations to adapt to this new normal?
Yeah, no, great question. So, look, I think there's a lot Philippines can learn from Singapore and Indonesia's experience, in particular regarding the digital transformation and the digital banking plans and how they've gone about in sort of managing this strategically, but also ensuring that there's a plan to support it long term. Because nobody was an expert at this. We all kind of started at some point where Philippines will start or has already really embarked on that journey. So in Singapore, the MAS, or the Monetary Authority of Singapore, obviously has a long-term strategic goal to create Singapore as the finance hub of Asia. And I know Philippines has some ambitious goals as well overall. And they've done this sort of by encouraging innovation, actively courting foreign investments and tech talent, supporting a startup culture, and even, as government investing in some of them, developing very clear regulatory framework, which obviously has evolved with this digital services, digital transformations, availability of technology. So I think Singapore has done a great job in not just, creating these laws, but also providing guidance and hand-holding businesses in ensuring that they have the means to meet these requirements. Instead of you being getting slapped with a fine. So it's a real process. They collaborate with organisations to ensure regulatory compliance. Also, another great thing Singapore did was, trialling innovative products and services in a sandbox environment, which really encouraged the collaboration between the private and public sectors to experiment innovative products and services that can really support the digital nation. and the goals for Singapore. Also reducing red tapes and making it easy to register and do business locally. Grooming tech talent and investing in education, as I mentioned before, the continuous learning through programs and government grants and subsidies. Other government grants for various digital initiatives. For example, in Singapore, if your solution that you're implementing qualifies for certain criteria, such as it introduces efficiencies, it is part of your digital transformation, etc., you get a government grant for implementing that, and you can subsidize the cost or part of the cost towards it. So this really encourages the businesses who may not be able to afford a lot of these options to be able to get the grants to be tech savvy in supporting the digital growth. Indonesia too has set up several government associations and initiatives to both encourage the spirit of innovation and digitalization of Indonesia, such as supporting local startups. I think that's quite important. And once again, regulation, licensing to protect consumers and to prevent bad actors or frauds. They also introduced eKYC mandate for financial institutions, again to protect customers, but also to support digitalization. Lastly, having partnered with various traditional banks and neobanks and big tech companies across Southeast Asia, including in Philippines, our clients are realizing that data is really the new oil. In a digital era, not effectively managing and utilizing data can leave traditional institutions behind. Transactions hold a lot of valuable data now that, you know, we're doing everything online. Imagine the amount of access you have to data, which offers insights into consumer patterns and needs, as well as credit score, risk profiling, amongst other intelligence. Now, analyzing data by leveraging AI and ML to access data intelligence helps these banks tailor targeted solutions to win customers while delivering superior customer service with digital onboarding, improving customer experience. What we're hearing from our clients is that possession of such data has really become critical in the battle to gain market share, because banks need to reinvent themselves at a much faster rate than these big tech companies like Grab and Gojek are doing, and they're technology savvy, as well as the digital banks. Otherwise, these traditional banks are going to lose out in the digital banking rat race.
Wow, you know, that was awesome. You mentioned about experiences in Singapore and Indonesia, but what I'd like to know is your view of the Philippine market in terms of AI, or in terms of digital banking, in terms of you know, what you see as the growth of the Philippine banking industry. What is it here in the Philippines on a regional point of view? What do you see in the Philippines, and what is the potential of the banking industry, as well as, of course, fintech here in the Philippines?
Sure. Look, I think there's a huge potential for fintechs in a country like Philippines, which is, you know, again, an emerging market. So you have a lot of opportunities. I think the biggest opportunities being a large population is unbanked or underbanked. So being able to take advantage of that opportunity by offering better services and more affordable services, again, you know, promoting financial inclusion is really a critical requirement in Philippines. So I think the opportunity is immense in Philippines, and I know as part of the digital transformation roadmap by 2023, BSP has two, strategic goals: expand the number of financially included Filipinos to 70%, converting 50% of total volume of retail payments to digital form, some sort of a digital form, right? So while, BSP has released draft frameworks around digital banking licenses, digital banking will undoubtedly contribute towards sustaining small businesses and economy, as it gives businesses the opportunity to offer various products that support growth quickly without the high cost. This also means, Philippines businesses need to start their own digital transformation roadmap to be able to take advantage of this opportunity. So making products and services available online, accepting digital payments, digitalizing operations by adopting technology to reduce manual work, as demand increases from financial inclusions. And I think this is the time for Philippines to rise to the challenge of meeting the needs for a greater population than they are currently.
You mentioned about this new plans of the Central Bank of the Philippines and this new rules that eventually will impact on the growth of the Philippine businesses. But with again, as you compare it with the neighbors, is this on track? What's your outlook on how this will develop and eventually place us in a higher ranking in this surveys on our financial inclusion indicator? Are we there? And how do you see the Philippines faring eventually, given these guidelines, new rules with the Central Bank of the Philippines?
Sure. Look, I think, Philippines has some ways to go in really being able to take advantage of this digital economy. There are three building blocks that are really required to make this happen long-term, successfully adding to the economy. So the three things are really the widespread mobile coverage that is affordable. I think that's going to be key. When you compare it to Singapore, for example, that's obviously not an issue. We're very small island, but whereas Philippines, you have so many islands, so coverage is definitely going to be a challenge. So that's number one. Two is the digital infrastructure. As I mentioned, Singapore is digitally equipped, and it has been for some time. Being able to scan a code, being able to access, ID information from a national centralized database, etc. And thirdly, a dynamic business environment for these financial services and digital finance products that can meet the needs of individuals and small businesses in a way that is superior to the informal financial tools or the means they're using to get finance, like loan sharks, for example. So the offering has to be better than going to a loan shark and getting a loan. So look, while there are all these opportunities, I think there are these three fundamental things that need to happen for Philippines to really be able to compete, with the neighboring countries. And I think Philippines has the potential. I mean, you guys have had, some of the largest growth in terms of GDP compared to the other Asian countries over the past 2 decades, which is pretty impressive with the BPO business. So I believe Philippines will definitely be a tough contender in this digital space if you can fix those three things.
Of the three building blocks, as you mentioned, is there somehow a priority on these three, or are this equal in terms of priorities? And if you rank them based on your perspective, which one should be given focus more than the other?
Look, want them all. Come on, Caesar. But the thing with these three things is you can't really have one without the other. For example, you can't offer the financial services that customers need without a widespread mobile coverage that is affordable. So these are kind of dependent on each other. So they really need to happen, I believe, in sync. Having mobile coverage, providing a digital infrastructure, and the services to fill the gaps in the market. I think these three things need to happen, at the same time for this to work.
Mm-hmm. And Aradna, a lot of things happened already during the pandemic. We were locked down, for several months, and things have changed. And somehow this digital transformation accelerated because of that. But I am sure, even with your industry, there are changes in insights and behaviors as far as the consumers are concerned. So what are these based in your industry, and how you see the financial sector here in the Philippines? What are these behaviors or insights from customers that you think the whole banking sector should look at, as we now, as traditional banks, rethink their strategies and see themselves competing with big tech players?
Sure. Look, the acceleration of digital adoption and the demand for digital services, it means now more than ever businesses are really forced to offer these services online and digitalize their operations to be able to cater for the requirements of customers during restrictions, during social distancing measures. And I don't believe this is going to go away. I believe this is here to stay, to promote safety in living spaces. And we have COVID today, tomorrow it might be something else. So it's almost like preparing for whatever is going to come, because we want to be ready next time, hopefully. So the ability to offer digital onboarding, ID verification, fraud checks, screening, credit evaluation, partnerships with credit bureaus, utilizing a combination of various data sources, external, internal, leveraging AI and machine learning will help to cater for these requirements. And as these requirements evolve, the clients are now used to being able to do things from the comfort of their home. Even, e-commerce is an industry that's booming at the moment, because we're just so used to now buying everything online. It's easier and it's cheaper and it's convenient. So a lot of, our clients, especially within the banking, have really had to adopt to the entire infrastructure that they need to deliver this. Not just deliver this, but also to cater for the volume, the increase in volume that this brings. So fast onboarding, accuracy of, fraud checks or ID checks, being able to verify through the use of, APIs. Now you don't even have to implement a big chunky technology. Everything runs on APIs, so you're able to leverage, so many external technologies and partnerships to be able to truly offer a digital end-to-end offering to customers. So there's almost really no excuse, and through APIs, it's not as expensive as it used to be. And I do believe during, COVID, this has become a lot more affordable now because it has driven competition in the market. So you've got a lot of new entrants. You've got, payments companies, e-wallet companies, offering all sorts of service to fill the gap in the market. So this really has brought the prices down for implementing all of these digital solutions. So yeah, I think, there's no going back. It's, adapt or become irrelevant basically for a lot of these banks, which is why I guess it's great to be in the business we are. We assist, with digital transformation and helping organizations really reach the unbanked population by offering them other means of doing credit checks as opposed to just from a credit bureau.
Okay. Now, Ms. Serrana, I think you mentioned one very important fact earlier during the interview. You said data is the new oil. Now, a lot of small businesses, SMEs, are also watching Open for Business. What is the role of big data and AI, or artificial intelligence, now in the COVID-19 era? If you can somehow try to explain it in a layman's point of view, because as we said, things were accelerated. We were just thinking before, we were just talking about big data and the fourth industrial revolution and AI, but to SMEs who are just selling their stuff, they are now forced to go into digital transformation also, because as you mentioned, that's the only way for them to sell their stuff. But at the back of all that is big data and AI. So maybe if you can mention the role now of big data and AI, not only of course to SMEs but to big businesses, and how important is it to really look at these concepts and the innovations brought about by these advanced technologies.
Sure. Look, artificial intelligence and big data, provides organizations across various industries the capability to automate a lot of the manual processes and make them smarter, cheaper, and faster, but most importantly, accessible during the COVID era, or whatever may be the next in the future. So I break it down into front office, middle office, and back office, what kind of role big data and AI could play. So for front office, when we think about engaging with new clients, we have to go through a certain process. So we do ID verification, we collect documents, we verify the authenticity of documents, we do the customer onboarding, get all their personal information, then the customer waits, and then we may send them a notification 5 days later to say their loan has been accepted. This is quite a long and arduous process for customers, so not a great customer experience. By applying artificial intelligence and being able to utilize big data, companies can completely automate and transform this process. So you can go from 5 days to literally within an hour to complete this process. One, it's great customer experience, and two, efficiencies means you're saving on cost and time and effort in the front office. And it gives you the capability to bring on a lot more customers than you would within a day. Middle office, we know that we have these KYC requirements in, across Asia, really across the globe, which are regulatory requirements, anti-fraud checks, AML screening, PAP screening. A lot of these are sort of done for anyone who has greater risk exposure. Again, now a lot of these services and data sources are available through API, with a lot of smarts that you can build with AI to be able to screen a person within seconds and be able to give you a status to say there are no matches, AML matches. I'm not just talking a local, a screening list. I'm talking a global screening list for, people who are screened against anti-money laundering or terrorism financing, for example. It's just an example. And for back office, having the ability to crunch data and assess risk or gaining business intelligence from using predictive data is made possible with AI and ML because, again, you have access to transactions of these consumers. Your AI is able to identify patterns and trends and give you predictive data to be able to service your clients in a customized way. So they're not being sold everything every time they interact with you. It's very customized to their needs. AI plays a huge role, especially within this COVID-19 era, being able to remove the need for manual verification and manual inputs of data, which also means high accuracy, improves organizational efficiency, as I mentioned with the onboarding, without compromising customer experience or compliance requirements. So Advanced AI has also recently partnered with CIBI, as I mentioned, and this collaboration means that we can start to really extend to these unbanked population and start to collate data with the assistance of AI to be able to build profiles on these people who don't have one, to make it easier for them to access services across various industries. I think this in particular will especially cater for unbanked and underserved SMEs or consumers in Philippines. Yes, AI and big data has a huge role to play, especially now.
Wow, well said, Ms. Radna. I will no longer ask the number of people who will be losing their jobs because of the introduction of AI. But probably what I can ask is, what should be the skills of the future in as far as AI and post-pandemic should be as we speak of big data and artificial intelligence in terms of skills? Especially the ones who are students or new entrepreneurs who want to involve in themselves in business. What should be the skills of the future as far as artificial intelligence is concerned?
Sure. And also to address your points about, people possibly losing their jobs, I think what's happening is not necessarily machines replacing, jobs. It's machines replacing jobs that you don't really need a lot of skill to do, that can be automated, to allow people or organizations to upskill the people they have to do roles where they can actually add value. So, we're going to see, or we are already seeing roles that we've never seen before, such as, customer experience experts. Growing up, I never heard that term. I don't know about you. But, data scientist, that wasn't even a thing, not long ago. Artificial intelligence officer, head of AI, data analytics manager. So, these are all newly created roles born by artificial intelligence and big data. So I believe while, yes, some of these low-skilled jobs are being banished, it's creating a lot more jobs in our economy. And not just jobs, but a lot of innovative businesses now who can hire people because they need customer experience people to be able to utilize data effectively and efficiently, because that's not a skill that you had before in organizations. And I think, universities and the education system are catching up to what's required in the future. So you're seeing courses around artificial intelligence now. So it's kind of good to see that even the education system has sort of realized that, yes, we do need to cater for what's already here.
Yeah, Aradna, I hope we have a lot more time to discuss this interesting topic. But my last question is, what is your learning during the pandemic? On a personal level, what is it that you have realized? And after that, maybe your tips also to small businesses who wanted to bounce back, after a slump during the pandemic.
Sure. Personally, I think it's given me an appreciation for traveling a lot more than I appreciated when I used to travel often. But also, I guess it's it definitely made me explore Singapore a lot more than I would have. So I know every corner of Singapore now. But in terms of businesses, I guess the tip and advice I have for them is to, sort of really assess whether you actually need to build some of these capabilities, which is very costly, or can you leverage other technology providers who are actually experts at this and already have it built to deliver the same things that you want it to deliver for the customers that you are targeting in the market. So I think being able to leverage technology that already exists and can be customized to your needs is probably one of the biggest tips I can give these financial institutions, not just small ones, but the big traditional banks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Aradna Sharma, the Regional Sales Director of Advance AI. Open for Business. We'll be back. Stay with us.
Broadcast journalist Wayne De La Fuente returns on Philippine television and radio to deliver top stories and engage with the country's policymakers, shapers, and movers. Tatalakayin ang mga pangunahing balita alas 7 ng umaga mula Lunes hanggang Biyernes. Live sa teleradyo ng Net25 at Radyo Aguila DCEC 1062. Kasama si Wayne De La Fuente sa Balitalakayan.
Events happen around us all the time. In our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
Open for Business is back, and our term of the week is from Temenos.com. Our term of the week is digital banking. Digital banking is the digitization or moving online of all the traditional banking activities and program services that were historically only available to customers when physically inside of a bank branch. This includes activities like money deposits, withdrawals, and transfers, checking and saving account management, applying for financial products, loan management, bill payments, and account services. And our word of the week is from Esther Dyson. She said, "It may not always be profitable at first for businesses to be online, but it is certainly going to be unprofitable not to be online." Thank you for watching Open for Business. Join us again in the next episodes of Open for Business for more insights from CEOs, thought leaders, industry experts, and SMEs promoting business development in the Philippines. See you again every Saturday and Sunday here in Open for Business, where we discuss business information, deliver the latest business news to keep you informed and open for business and be ahead of the curve from vision to action. You're on Facebook Live on Eagle News and at Net25 TV, and you can watch this again in the video section of the Eagle News and Net25 Facebook pages and on eaglenewslive.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Net25 TV. Thank you again for watching for Open for Business. This is Cesar Vallejos. We live in interesting times.